I would like to begin the interview by telling you how pleased I am to know that you are a student of physical education in university and you happen to be blind. And I really want to, in this interview, I really want to philosophize and have a really good discussion about the importance um, of number one, the importance of physical education. Number two, the importance of appropriately including blind students and blind people in physical education. And number three, your motivation to participate in physical education, and then your goals to be a physical education coach. So I guess those three and a half to four things are all the bullet points that I want you to kind of just start talking about. And as we have the conversation, we'll just see where this goes. But just go for it and introduce yourself and go through all of that, and we'll see how the conversation goes. Go.
So thank you for having me. So I was born with a rare eye condition called Leber's congenital amaurosis, or LCA. And it can vary from person to person. Some people have light perception and can see shapes, and other people are like me, so they have some vision. I have no peripheral vision, so I can't see anywhere other than straight, so left, right, up, or down. And then the image moves rapidly back and forth for me. And so, as you said, I am in university with physical education. I graduated this spring with my associate's degree in physical education, and I'm headed to SUNY Brockport this fall to get my master's in adapted physical education, as well as a coaching certificate that I'm working towards this summer. So it was mainly for me to want that I do. For me, I wanted to get into sports because I loved sports from the beginning. I had a teacher I looked up to and everything. And so I just really wanted to be a part of it. But naturally, a lot of people don't want blind people or don't know how to accommodate more so for blind people in sports. So I was kind of put on the sidelines. And I just kind of thought that was the way it was supposed to be, just sitting there and, walking around the halls of my aide or doing sports on the side with people. Classmates, I just thought that was the way it was supposed to be. And then I got older and it's continued. And I was like, okay, well, we're now playing more advanced sports like dodgeball. And I'm like, I don't want to get hit with a ball. I'm good. And so I was fine with being on those sidelines. And then I found a sports camp in Saratoga, New York called Camp Abilities. And they had about 20 blind students there, and counselors were also there that were also blind. And it just showed they were all doing these sports that you wouldn't think a blind person could do. And it just really opened my eyes. We went tandem biking, we did track and field, we did goalball, beat baseball, just all of these sports that I had no idea existed. And, then I went back to school as a middle schooler. I went back and I joined a high school track team as a middle schooler. And just being at that camp really motivated me to try out for that team and pass those tests. And I continued that all the way through high school. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to do it in college because of our friend COVID, but that's basically where it all started. And then I wanted to do fitness when I was growing up. I wanted to be a fitness instructor. And then someone in my family mentioned, hey, you're a blind person. You've been on the sidelines. You know how to adapt stuff. You know everything there is to it. So why don't you actually teach it and, teach others that you can do it? So I kind of was like, it's a good idea, and just kind of stuck with it. And ran with it ever since.
I'm really, really impressed. And I think that just the fact that you have the courage and the maturity to come to a podcast of someone who is 10 years older than you. If I was 20, when I was 20, I would have been far too scared to just talk to some older person on some podcast that you've only heard of literally for the past 30 seconds. So just because the fact that you came on time, I mean, that really is something that is overlooked about people's personality. But when people come on time and they're ready and they know what they're talking about, boy, oh boy, does that make me want to hire you. I mean, I don't even have a physical education degree, and I'll hire you. Okay, I'll let you talk. I'll let you talk to Tyler Marin. Okay, I mean,
Okay.
I'm in his group. He was on the show a long time ago. There's also, it's just everything. Everything that you have said has proven to me that you should be hired as some sort of physical education instructor, exercise physiologist, something in that realm. My academic background, as you can tell, is in the field of international relations. And my entire life, I was someone who was never encouraged to do sports. Um, huh, that was odd. Just guys, a couple. When you're on your computer, a little dialogue thing flows across the screen just to distract you. That's what that was. No, nothing like a dialogue box. That was very odd. And I'm one of these people who was never encouraged to do sports. I was never encouraged to participate. And quite frankly, by the time it got to middle school and high school, same exact thing that you said, on the sidelines with people who, quite frankly, were in many cases simply not knowledgeable about blindness issues. Let me just put it that way. So, I mean, there's just so many questions to unpack here in this interview. But for one, what was the point where you discovered that physical education is really important and that it's an important thing for you to follow as a blind person? In other words, you told me all these great experiences you had at the camp, but at one point there had to be the aha moment where you realize, wait a minute, I'm a blind person who needs to take action in this matter. Basically, why is physical education so important to you as a blind person from a philosophical, fundamental standpoint?
So for me, it was something that, like you mentioned previously, it's something that you don't see very often. You don't see a blind person in sports or even going into the degree of physical education. So, um, it was a big kind of power move for me to be like, yeah, I'm blind, I'm doing physical education. And, often you see a blind people, we kind of go into kind of group fitness things like, okay, yeah, I'll go on a cycling class and I'll do this, I'll do that. But not many say, I'm going to do this. I'm going to be a fitness instructor. I'm going to be a PE teacher. And for me, that big aha moment where I said, this is what I want to do was at camp. I was a counselor in training. So I was able to get the privilege of working with a blind student, and I worked one-on-one with her all week. She's never, I believe she's never done any blind sports before. And just to see how excited she was over those sports and how excited she was that she could actually participate, and just her excitement really kind of
Yeah.
pushed me. And I was like, I want to do this. I want to see more students excited about fitness. I want to see more students excited that they're actually included with everybody else.
Yeah, perfect, perfect. It just kind of clicked for you. You just discovered, you know what? I really enjoy teaching this person, and I really enjoy doing that activity. So it's really important to me. Is probably what you thought.
Mhm.
Something. Yeah, good, perfect. Yeah, and I think the same is true with me. As actually, I am a teacher. That's my day job. I teach English as a second language online, and it's just what I love. I did a lot of teaching in university, and I just discovered that I'm supposed to be a teacher, and it's perfect. So I I completely support this idea. And there is, there is a lot of different things that you could get into, from physiology to training to it's a little bit further, a little bit more different, but I've also spoken to someone who is a not really a dietitian, but she helps people maintain a healthy life. There's kind of different dietitian types of things that you could do
Mhm.
that affects the physical, that affects physiology. There's probably a lot, a lot of jobs out there in this field. So,
Mhm.
but just going from a school perspective, to back up a little bit. So, are there any, and please tell me that are there any other blind physical education teachers who teach in a public, secondary school or high school? What have you found for that?
For as far as teachers go, I'm sure there are some out there, but I don't know of any. There are a few students at SUNY Brockport that are in the adapted physical education field, and they are blind. So they may become teachers. One of them is going to get her doctorate so she can teach at as a professor. So they're out there, I'm sure. I'm not sure of any.
Hmm. I would say it would be good to know. That would be good information to have as a key network point, to know who to talk to, other people in the industry. So, okay. So, let's define some terms, because this is, as I've said, this is definitely not a topic that I've spoken about much at all, because it's really unusual. So, for one,
Mhm.
how do you define physical education? What is it?
Um, that's a good question.
Okay, well, because it leads into the next question.
Yeah.
Because before I ask what I'm going to ask next, I need to know what physical education is, right? So
Yeah.
when I was in middle school, high school, what was the point of me going to that class? Why is that class there?
So I would say physical education is in a subject that is implemented into schools all over America and all over the world, in fact. And it teaches kids basically how to stay active and work on their personal wellness and well-being. And all these skills that they learn in physical education can last them a lifetime.
There you okay. So how about I would define physical education as the study of living a healthy life.
Or you could do that.
Okay, so then that's fine. That's fine. So what is because you know what? If you're going to study this in a university, you should be able to educate other people about it, and be able to philosophize, as I say, and be able to have conversations, so that when someone goes to hire you, they know that you know what you're talking about, you know? So then what is adaptive physical education?
Adaptive physical education is providing students with disabilities the tools to be active and have a healthy
How about
lifestyle.
there you go. How about adaptive physical education is the study of helping people with disabilities live a healthy and active life.
Mhm.
There we go. Okay, so exactly, if you take a class in adaptive physical education, or if you're taking a class in physical education as a study, so what are the professors teaching you? Is it a lot of in the classroom and then in a physical gym setting, both? Like, what exactly do you do?
So when I was getting my associates, the college I went to, it was kind of like a lot of book work, I want to say. So it was like you did anatomy and physiology, you did um, your English and your histories and all that. And, you did a few classes where they teach you. I did a self-defense class and I did a aerobic boxing class. I did a weight training class. And from what I was told, eventually when you get to your 4 year, they kind of flip-flop it. So it's you're teaching that class now because you've already experienced what it's like to be in that class and what it's doing. So then eventually down the road, you'll teach that class or other classes.
Excellent. So if you were working in the capacity of a teacher, especially for teenagers or children, which by no means am I limiting you by saying you should do that. I certainly am not. Actually, I think you would be more likely to actually be teaching adults. But if you were teaching children and teenagers, what type of class, like, what's your thing? Like, what's your thing that you really enjoy teaching? Like, what do you have, like a favorite physical activity that you just love to teach and love to do?
Um, I I mostly go for kind of team building kind of activities. So I kind of if I was a teacher and if and when I would incorporate a lot of the sports that we learned at camp. So like running might be one of them. So like we'll have some of the kids half be blindfold, half, have vision, and then they're, running together with their tether and then they switch. So it's kind of like a team building kind of thing. And I think that would be a lot of fun for the kids to learn. And, it brings awareness about blindness and also just increases communication skills and, team building skills.
Excellent. Really, really, really good. My physical activity that I do is I remember that I told when I spoke to him, I told Tyler Marin the same exact thing, and he liked this whole philosophy. Is I am not an athletic person, meaning I don't do sports, but I'm still healthy. I eat a healthy diet and I exercise every day, unless I'm recording a podcast. So because of that, I think that I'm actually a relatively healthy person, and I think that it's a very, very important distinction to make and to educate people about whenever you can, because
Mhm.
not everyone will be active. Not everyone will be, able to actually compete in a sport, and that's okay. What I think is equally important, if not more, is to stress the importance of being healthy, of knowing
Mhm.
about a healthy diet, of knowing the other person. I don't want to make too big of a deal of two name drops, but I'm really into this episode because there's another person. I'm sure you know her. There's another person that I'm going to send this episode to after we publish it. I'm going to say, hey, take a listen, because this other person had a lot of knowledge that I spoke with, and she had a lot of knowledge about dieting and the importance of knowing what to eat and what not to eat. So yeah, when you study physical education, do they go through a dietitian and like a nutrition unit with you? Do you learn about that?
Yeah, that was one of the classes that I took. It was called Sport and Nutrition. And
Right.
they kind of, break it down a little bit and you do little experiments on how the body um, breaks down glucose and carbohydrates, or those are the same thing. But yeah, how the body breaks down different materials and where it goes and where it's stored and stuff like that.
Well, gee, I have a question, since you walked into that trap. So how
Oh
does the
no.
body how does oh, you should have never said that. How does the body break down carbohydrates?
It's just as you exercise, the body uses carbohydrates and burns it as fuel, so it breaks down
Excellent.
big molecules and makes them into smaller ones.
Perfect. Perfect. And why do you need to know that as a physical education teacher?
Mostly because then you're able to tell your athletes or students what they need to replenish on. So if you have a big soccer game and your team is outside and they're running and they're playing, it's like, okay, well, you need to drink some electrolytes, so some Gatorade to
Mm.
replenish those carbohydrates that you lost while you're running like a mad person. And the night before you should eat some protein so that way you have some food, yeah, some molecules, left over for all stored, so you're all ready to go. Kind of like filling up your car with gasoline before you go on a
Yeah.
long trip.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's very important to educate people about this because we see so many people. I mean, and by saying this, by no means am I making a statement of judgment, to which I am not. I'm just making a sweeping statement that I
Mhm,
think a lot of people really don't understand how to eat healthy.
mhm,
And I think we can see that because we have doctors who, in addition, so for me, let me segue or kind of interrupt myself a little bit. So I'm blind, I have glaucoma, and I also have something wrong with my heart. It's a bit of a long story, but to make a long story shorter, I can tell you that my cardiologist, who is an absolutely brilliant, brilliant doctor, just an amazing, amazing gift to society, always says that now that he's been living in the States for a while, he really sees how people in this country treat their heart, and we don't treat our heart very well in this country, just as a whole. you know
mhm,
when it comes to studying this, overseas in other countries, people's diets really, the answer here that I think, if it interests you, you should research it, learn more about it, is that people are a lot nicer to their heart in a lot of other countries, and that
mhm,
there is a correlation, and
mhm.
the heart is critical. The other one is the kidney, and
Yep.
those vital organs, which I'm sure you learned about, or you should have, or you should learn more
Mhm,
about. Those vital organs are really important, and if they get even, the slightest amount of damage is a tremendous trauma to the body. And we're discovering just even now how much trauma it is for our body when one of our organs isn't doing so good. So yeah, definitely eat healthy. I remember I have a younger brother who's 23 and ish, and he was on the swim team in high school. And before a swim meet, they would take them out to a restaurant, an Italian place, and they would make them eat spaghetti, to
mhm,
get all their carbs up and stuff like that. I do remember that they made a big deal of eat as much pasta as you can. Yeah.
mhm.
Um, what is your opinion from a physical education perspective? What is your opinion of TV shows, where participants, I don't necessarily want to name the show too much, but where participants go out into the wild and they don't eat for a very long period of time? Do you know what show I'm talking about?
Believe so, yeah.
Yeah, what's your opinion of that show? Where I'll give you another clue. They don't have much for clothing. That show.
Mhm.
That show.
Yeah, I
That
got
show.
it.
What's your opinion? And if you could work with those people and talk to them about health, what questions would you ask? Because I'm really fascinated by it.
I would mostly like ask them, how do they expect them to get food? And most importantly, get it so that it's clean food, because if they're out in the woods, you need clean water. So how do they make sure that it's clean water and there's nothing in there that's going to make them sick? And the food, how do they know, if it's going to be, clean food? You don't want anything that has, a disease or anything, because they don't have anything. So it's like if they get sick, then what do you do? It's there's a lot of questions out there for that, like a physical education teacher would probably shake their head at and be like, they really shouldn't be
Yeah.
out there.
So you wouldn't really support that concept. You're kind of against it too, from an exercise physiology perspective. You would also say at very least it's just a really bad idea. At most, it's definitely dangerous. Now, do you think you can prove that that what they're doing is actually detrimental to their heart and vital organs, or not so much? What do you think?
Um, I think if I went to kind of like where the participants are and just kind of like collected samples on like the water that's there and being like, see, it's got all of this stuff in it, or like, the just the conditions out there, and just kind of just running different tests and experiments and just kind of saying like, see, this isn't, this might have been good for our ancestors a long, long time ago, but we've adapted over, centuries to what we have now. So going back, it probably would really hurt the body because we're not used to that.
But you know what? I have a theory, and this is purely my opinion. I don't even know if it's
Mhm.
a fact. Actually, it's not, because it's an opinion. I think that if you go back to the history books, and history, Megan, is one of my favorite subjects, and I love to talk to
Mhm.
people about history and international affairs and archaeology. I'll talk to you about that anytime you want to talk history. Just give me a call. I'll tell you. I think throughout history, the answer is, of course, people had heart attacks thousands of years ago. We just
Mhm.
forgot who they are because they died. Of course, people had kidney failure. They just didn't know what to do back
Mhm.
then. You kidney failure back then, you'd be dead. You'd be dead before sun. You'd be saying ouch at sunrise and in the ground by sunset.
Mhm.
So I don't know, factually speaking, if there's much documentation. And actually, there is medical documentation from the Roman Empire and the ancient Greeks, but and they did try to do, they did try to look at the organs, and they actually were pretty close, and a lot of their knowledge was pretty close, pretty good, pretty disturbingly accurate to what it is today.
Mhm.
But they had no technology, or should we say, very little. Fact is,
Mhm.
what you were saying about water, well, I mean, I don't have the knowledge to know if ancient people were able to drink water with parasites and that they didn't get sick. I mean, it's not fair for me to make that assumption. I would say probably people died all the time. It's just they died, so we don't know who they
Mhm.
are. Is more likely what happened. Now, you could go talk to an archaeologist about that and say, is there any basically physical evidence from studying archaeology that shows that their bodies, that their organs were actually anatomically, I guess is the word, anatomically different back then, and they were able to break down certain bacteria? The answer is they might have been a little bit different, but not that much.
Mhm.
So who knows really? But I think it's really fascinating when we just study diet and then we study people who do extreme activities and things like that, and the role and really the effect that has on the heart and the vital organs is probably more severe than we're even aware when we're studying it the right way. So, and how was this camp run that you went to? You seem to have a really positive experience at this camp. What do you think about that?
So it's a week long camp, and it's overnight, and it's mostly they take over college campuses. So the one in Saratoga takes over Skidmore College, and it started at SUNY Brockport in I think 25, 26 years ago. A good friend of mine, Dr. Lauren Lieberman, started it. And now it's got camps all over the world. And just it's changing so many blind people's lives throughout the years. And it's really cool to see all of these students and athletes realize coming to the realization that they can do sports as well.
That's really good. So is Capabilities like an international, like, nonprofit? Like, what is that as an organization?
So it is a international nonprofit, I believe. Yes. So
Oh.
Lauren just got some camps established in like Ghana and Ireland and
Hmm.
Kenya.
Wow. Wow. Well, we can talk about more about it off the air, but that sounds like someone that I would like to interview. That's really fascinating. That's really important. Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, if you know her personally, we can talk later, but I would love to have someone like that on Aaron's Opinion. That's a really interesting conversation. The history behind that camp and really how it got started and how they operate overseas. And That's incredible. That's a really good thing to do. And they're
Mhm.
really changing lives for that. So, have you been to one of these camps overseas to actually see, the effect and to see the positive results?
I would love to go see one of them. And so it might be a possibility now that I'm at SUNY Brockport. So I'm looking forward to it.
Hmm. That's very interesting for sure. Yes. Um, okay, well, really good. So, what are your goals, following, after you complete this degree in adaptive physical education? What do you want to do? And then that whole coaching certificate. Why do you need a coaching certificate? And talk about that.
So after um, adaptive phys ed, when it's all said and done, the goal is to be a teacher at a secondary school, or at a gym or something, just teaching uh, adapted phys ed to different age ranges and stuff. Or, I could always, I don't know if it's a job, but kind of doing stuff like I'm doing here, just kind of going around to different locations, different schools, and just running workshops about adapted phys ed and being like, if you have a student who's blind, they can do it. I graduated, I have my degree, so then they can do it, and just kind of spreading the word about it. As far as the coaching certificate goes, my a family member kind of suggested like, hey, you should get this coaching certificate, and then you can, kind of coach some stuff before you get your degree, so you kind of get that experience. So I kind of started it at the end of spring, and then taken a few more classes this summer, and I did an internship with one of my old coaches for track and field. And I did run into that moment of, why am I doing this? I'm blind. I can't do this, because I couldn't see some of the stuff that they were doing. So it was really hard to give some of the athletes feedback and be like, yeah, you need to, work harder on your spin. You need to do whatever. It was just very hard for me. And then, I did some searching around, and I found other blind coaches, and I'm like, okay, this is a possibility. They're out there. And, I call it my movie moment, where I realized that, I can't teach or coach, a sighted way. I can't stand there and watch them, because that's not who I am. I don't have that ability to do that. I have to teach them the blind way. So, I went in the next day, and I have this neon green t-shirt that says in big letters, "I'm blind, can't you see?" And I, I went in, and I asked the athletes if I could feel their ankle while they were doing their half spins. And it kind of really helped that I had the shirt, because they were like, probably looking at me weird, like, oh, why are you? Oh, you're blind. Okay, sure. Yeah, go ahead. And yeah. And then I was like able
Awkward,
to do it.
awkward cricket chirps for a second there, awkward silence, but yeah, okay, no problem.
They're like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, that's fine, sure.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, and that's another thing is that, if you're teaching physical education or physiology, you have to be, you have to be comfortable with the body, similar to
mhm,
medicine too. You got to be okay, like, being around other people, sometimes touching a hand, you have to be okay with that. And actually, a lot of people are not okay with even the simplest little,
yeah.
little thing like that. So that is important to go about it in a confident and a professional and a comfortable way, and that is critical that you
Mhm.
that you did that. I really like your sense of humor about that. I'm just like imagining it in my mind, like the people sitting on the floor like in squads, like they would in the class, and they just see someone come in with that shirt, and then in everybody's mind, oh Lord, oh Lord, is probably what they said. Like, oh God. And then you said it, and then they were like, oh, okay, I guess that's not 100% weird. That's just that's just 75% weird. So we can allow that,
I
but yeah.
I think it clicked for them though too, because I was there for a few days before. And I have a guide dog with me. So they were
Oh,
probably like, why do you have a dog? Why are you here? And then
I
I
support.
kind of was
Hold on,
like,
hold on now. And where is your guide dog from?
my guide dog is from Guiding Eyes for the Blind.
Yorktown Heights, New York.
Yep.
Yep. So, and I'll tell you something. I'll tell you something about guide dogs off the air. I don't like to get into the podcast just because I don't want the audience to get upset about something. But I'll tell but I completely support guide dogs 1,000%. So just God bless you for having a guide dog. That's really important. Thank you thank you for choosing Guiding Eyes for the Blind. No, I don't work for them. And no, this episode of Aaron's Opinion is not sponsored by Guiding Eyes for the Blind, Yorktown Heights, New York. But let me just tell you guys, I love Guiding Eyes for the Blind, Yorktown Heights, New York. So there you go. Send some love. And what is your guide dog? Is it a black lab?
He is a yellow lab.
Wonderful. Named what?
Hero.
Here. Okay. You know what I'm going to say about that? Gym class heroes.
Yes, we are.
How often do you get that? Wasn't there some group called Gym Class Heroes? Or some song or some artist along the way called Gym Class Heroes? There might have been.
I think it's Jukebox Heroes. Is
Could
it?
have been. Could have been. I don't know. Could have been. Who knows?
I don't know.
Who knows?
Maybe.
I don't know. But hero is a perfect name for a guide dog, especially if you're doing physical sports. That's just perfect. That really is. So good. So good. How old is he?
He is going to be 6 in September.
Oh, lovely. Lovely. So what made you get a guide dog?
So I have a organization here in Albany, New York, that is called the Northeastern Association for the Blind in Albany. And I went there since I was 7. And they just kind of do a bunch of skills stuff. So they teach you how to cook, how to do mobility, and just all these little games. And you connect with blind people from like 7 years to 18. And there was a worker there that came all the time, and she was a puppy raiser for Guiding Eyes. And so she always brought in the dogs, and we got to see a lot of them and got to pet a lot of them and everything. And as I got older, she was like, "Are you going to get a dog? Are you going to get a dog?" And I'm like, "I'm 12. I can't get one yet."
That's so good.
Then I turned 16 and she was like, "You're getting a dog." I'm like, "Yes, I am."
It was a huge decision for me over 13 years ago for me. But what made you get a guide dog? But again, what was the aha moment where you realized, a guide dog really is perfect for me?
So Hero is one of Guiding Eyes for the Blind's running guide dogs.
Oh yeah, you did say, you know what? You used that word in your video. I meant to ask you, what does running mean? What does that even mean?
So he's trained to run alongside me. Some dogs don't want to because they're like, "I'm not a runner," like people. And then other dogs are like, "Yeah, I'll do it." And it just means they have to do stuff a lot faster. So they have to find those curbs a lot faster. They'll go around the obstacles a lot faster. And not many dogs want to do it.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So Hero is probably very high energy. He would be more of a hyper high energy lab.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like labs that are calm, that aren't runners, that are more calmer. Still very, very healthy, very active, but in like a calm way.
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't notice that he's a runner just by looking at him, because he's just like, "I'm gonna sit in the sun, I'm gonna laze around." But he knows when we're gonna go run, and he's like, "Oh, better go to the bathroom first, and let's go, Mom."
Yeah, that's so good. That's really, really excellent. Well, good. So, yeah, I think a factor of that is how you will eventually incorporate, not necessarily incorporate, but of course, you would have to bring your guide dog to the school, the organization. So I think overall, I think that's a really positive influence on anyone, but especially a teenager or a child. I think that's a really appropriate influence and a really positive one. So that's really interesting. So good, so good. Um, and wow, and you got so did you get your guide dog when you were 16?
I got Hero actually on my 16th birthday. That's when Dog Day fell at Guiding Eyes for the Blind. So my trainer walked in. Happy birthday, Megan. Here's your life-changing dog.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, it's so good. That's so good. Now when I was there, they didn't really do it. It wasn't really like that. They didn't really do it quite in that way, but that's incredible. That's really incredible. Yeah, it's so good. I got my dog when I was 18. And I wouldn't have been ready at 16. I don't think I wouldn't have had the need or the desire at 16,
Mhm.
because I'm from a very rural, small community somewhere, and it's just, I never grew up with the transportation and things like that. When you mentioned
Mhm.
that Northeastern organization, that reminds me of an organization in my state where they do a lot of training and they do summer camps and things like that. So it seems like every state has a blindness organization that trains people that does very similar things from state to state, which it's
Mhm.
always good to know about these things. Yeah. Um, and have you done much traveling overseas, by the way?
I have not. I would love to, but I have not.
Yeah. Yeah, we can talk about it. I'll tell you, I've traveled overseas with my guide dog, and it was quite a fiasco.
Oh, I can imagine.
So that's one thing, I don't mean to discourage you or scare you, but it, certain countries are really difficult and they don't
Mhm.
care that it's a guide dog. They still seem to have requirements for all animals entering the country. From a, from a scientific perspective, I totally get it,
Mhm.
because there's so many germs that can enter a country through animals. But I think there needs to be some global system where countries make notes of who the guide dogs are and who the real guide dogs are, to know that that dog is healthy and doesn't have, you know, certain parasite or bacteria or sickness. But
Mhm.
I remember that with that dog, it was very difficult to get her into several countries. I practically couldn't go on vacation twice. So it was pretty, whew. I mean, I don't miss that trauma. I don't miss, that's the stress that I don't miss.
Mhm.
So, anyway, that's really fascinating. So then, how are you spending your time? And what I mean by spending your time is, are you listening to other podcasts? Before I contacted you or before you started getting into YouTube, had you ever like heard of me before?
Um, to be honest, no, I have not.
That is fine. That is fine. And what made you get into YouTube? What made you start your YouTube channel with one very good video, by the way?
Thank you. Um, so I kind of did a podcast last weekend with someone on the pod. I don't know if I'm allowed to mention the name here, but I did a podcast last week, and he was kind of very interested in the fact that I was blind and doing um, physical education as a degree, and he had vision. So I was like, this really like kind of was my aha moment again, where it was like more people need to know that you can be blind and do stuff. And I'm like, if I can, make YouTube videos and just kind of like putting out little things that I did growing up for different sports and just different accommodations and just little things that, teachers could do to help bring students out of off those sidelines, I'll do it. I'm very excited to do it.
Cool, cool. Now, how did you find that Sighted podcaster? I'm just curious. Like, did they hear about you or what?
So I did a a video for my graduation that kind of basically did the same thing where it's like, I'm a blind person, I'm graduating, and I, have a guide dog, I'm in phys ed, I just kind of doing a summary over me. And so I kind of shared that around. I got share happy and just kind of shared it everywhere just to be like, look at, you could be blind and do phys ed. And he saw it and he was like, hey, want to be on my podcast? I'm like, sure, why not? Let's spread the word.
Cool. Excellent. Well, that's really good. Yeah. And what are some other goals for your YouTube channel? Because I have found that YouTube is an excellent way and an easy way and an excellent way to promote what we do in a very productive way. We can really reach a huge audience on YouTube. So, what do you really want to do with your YouTube channel?
So I decided to kind of release a video once a month, just because
Once a month. What if I forget? What if I forget who you are in 3 weeks? See, that's interesting. I release content once a week. See, so that's
yeah.
interesting. Once a month. I don't know. You might want to think about that because people have a very short attention span. So you have to kind of be consistent about when you choose to release things. So why once a month? I'm just curious.
Well, just because I was starting out with this channel and then I'm starting a new college. So I didn't want to have that pressure of being like, oh my God, I need to edit this video. I need to make sure it's out. I need to make sure everything's set and then have, the first time living away from home and everything all on one thing. So I was like, if I just do it once a month for now until I get used to living on my own in college and get used to having a channel and everything. Then, as time goes on, then I'll be like, okay, now we'll do once a week or something like that.
Well, that's really good. Yeah, I would say once a week, and I'm once a week at a specific time because I'm on a radio station. So I coordinate my uploads with the station, and it's all I time it based on that. But I think once a week is good. And every day can just get kind of too much. So you have to find the middle ground between the two. Yeah. So what are some topics that you want to cover? Who are some people that you want to interview on that channel?
So right now I just have me, but Lauren Lieberman would definitely be one of the people that I would kind of pick on, be like, hey, you want to do a video with me? So just having her on and just talking about, capabilities and stuff, and kind of like how I run with or without a guide dog, different teaching techniques you can do if you have a blind student, how to do shot put and discus as a blind person, and just kind of some of the sports that I did, how I did it as a blind person.
So how do you teach a blind student? What are some of those skills for teaching a blind student?
So it's all in a paper that Dr. Lauren Lieberman wrote, and it's basic. One of them is like using tactile maps, so kind of using puffy paint and drawing out the court, and then you're able to have your blind student kind of feel the board and be like, oh, that's what you're talking about with the basketball court, because they've never seen one before. So it's good to have that kind of technique out there, as well as like tactile modeling. So like the kind of like what I did with coaching, where I kind of felt their ankle as they did their throw. So kind of doing the same thing, allowing the blind student to kind of feel the teacher as they're going through the motion. So it's like, oh, okay, that's what they're talking about. Because sometimes it's hard to understand what someone's talking about by just describing it. So sometimes just being able to be like, oh, your arm is supposed to be, at a 45-degree angle, not a straight line. Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Right. That is really, really excellent. And I think with the coaching and with producing YouTube videos, I think you could definitely get into some sort of a uh, kind of a consulting thing where people like call on you to help them to develop curriculum and that type of thing. I think there's definitely a market for that,
Mhm,
especially once, you know, for children and teenagers, once they start to get back into the swing of things, back going to school, once everything starts to get back to normal, I think what you're doing will become even more important. So
mhm,
this would be a really good time to hone in on these skills and to really figure out what you would like your contribution to be, you know? And
mhm,
for me, I mean, as I said, I'm 30 years old. I haven't figured out what my contribution is. I'm not just saying it. I'm saying it because it's the truth. I don't know what my contribution is. I know that
mhm,
there's things I enjoy and love, like teaching, podcasting, helping other people to get their message out. I think that helps me to feel better. That's very medicinal for me to know that I'm helping you. And we never know. This video might help someone 10 years from now, and we don't even know who that person is now. So
mhm,
who knows how much of a help this is? But really, you have to think, okay, you know, if you're a physical education instructor for 30 years in the field and then you eventually do retire, you want to be able to look back and say, that was my contribution. Here's what I accomplished. You want you
mhm.
want to you want to be able to say that. And for me, I don't know what that thing is. There's, as I said, things I love to do now, there's things I want to do, and then there's the majority. Actually, the sad truth is what they never tell you in university, and this is the type of thing that I would have ignored, and I know you're going to pay attention when I tell you this, is the sad truth is that once you graduate university and get into the real world, most of what you're dealing with are things that are unknowns. So
Mhm.
there's more chore doing and unknowns and mysteries than there are actually knowing things that you're supposed to be doing. So there's a lot more figuring out of things than you need to be figuring out is what I'm saying.
That's
It's
part of the fun.
well, fine. Hey, you know what? Well, that makes me want to hire. You know what? That makes you hireable. The fact that you're willing to enter the unknown and help people live a healthy life. That's really important. But your personality is a really good one. Is a really something is very positive and very promising about your personality and your character as a person.
Thank
I'm
you.
quite quite impressed. Um, and yeah, and I think that there's, you know, I think that you could be a great role model for a lot of physical education teachers. Many of them are great, and a lot of them, just like a lot of other people, are just sort of, you know, no pun intended, just throwing the ball in for the motions.
Yep.
So that I think is a big problem, and I know that this is controversial when I say this, but there are some people in the physical education field, just like any field, who sort of shouldn't be there.
Mhm,
And it was very obvious to me that I encountered people like that, not just in gym class, but quite frankly, a lot of people are like that in life. But I think the difference is that in a gym class, there's a lot of risks.
mhm.
I think that another area to think about. I mean, this just is just a treasure trove of questions to ponder and to think about. How would you react if a parent came to you, and this could go either way? Again, not saying that you would teach children, just imagine that you would. And let's say that a parent of a sighted child came to you and they said, "Oh, hi, good morning, Miss Hale. I see that you're my son's gym teacher. That's great and all, but I'm kind of worried about Joey's safety in the class. With all those balls and running around, how are you as a blind person going to keep him safe? How would you respond to that and prove that you're able to be a great teacher?"
So that was actually something that like I kind of thought about, and I'm still kind of pondering like how that would happen. Um because it is something that comes up, that would come up a lot, is like, how are you able to do this if you can't see? This isn't safe. It might not even make me hireable, because a sighted employer would be like, oh, you're blind? You have all the qualifications, but you're blind. I don't think that's going to be a safe idea. So I might, for like adapted phys ed, they are sometimes smaller. So it's maybe 10, 15 kids instead of, I don't even know how big classes are now, like 30 or so. So that makes it a bit easier to have the smaller amount. And then sometimes the teacher of that special ed class kind of stays. So I might have an assistant with me just to kind of oversee everything and be like, okay, little Johnny just got hit in the face. And then I can be like, oh, okay. And then just kind of go over and see if little Johnny's okay.
Mm-hmm. I think it's fair to say that from a liability perspective, and he's not in the WhatsApp group, but I do know a blind lawyer who's extremely knowledgeable about law. And one thing is, I too am knowledgeable about the law, and one thing is definitely true, that it doesn't really matter how you pitch it, how you cut it. If you're proven to be a liability by the definition of liability, then the way an employer views it and the way the law views it is you're a liability. And that's just how that law works. It doesn't really matter that you're blind and a great teacher. What matters is that you're a great teacher who presents a liability.
Yep.
I don't know what to say apart from when I name dropped accidentally a little bit earlier. Talk to that person about it. Talk to other people in the field about it. But I can foresee that there will be a tremendous question about liability, and it's nothing personal. It's nothing personal about you, but it's simply, there's no way for me to say it's an opinion. It is a liability if the gym teacher can't see, and then a child gets hurt, especially if it's a child. Even still, even at a university level or adults, still, if they're at some organization, the teacher didn't see it, and then there was an injury, it's still, you're still liable, and you're still a liability. That fundamentally, that's a mountain to climb. Fundamentally,
yes. Yeah, it's a concern, and it's a thing that I understand. I can see where people would be concerned,
right?
But it's something that if you have some people to talk to, you can kind of come up with something to work out. And
yeah, I would say, and I'm Megan, I'm admitting to you, as I've already said, that I'm clearly not a physical education teacher. So I can't pretend to be. I am an English as a second language teacher. If you want to talk about English, I can help you with that. I will tell you, though, from my philosophy about going through life, sometimes a little honesty can go a long way. And honesty goes all the way with me 99% of the time. You could say something like, I am a liability, but here's an even better reason why you should hire me. So you kind of have to turn the liability, you have to kind of turn that wheel and turn the liability into an asset. Next question. You might want to know, well, Aaron, how do I turn a liability into an asset? I don't know. For you to talk about, for you to find out a way. But that's what you would need to do, because all successful people in life, even sighted people, whether they're blind or not, the sad truth is it happens more to us blind people, and it happens more frequently because we're blind. But the thing that sighted people, it's a secret. Don't tell anyone. But the secret is this: everybody has to overcome something in life, and everybody has to figure out why they're an asset, and to turn an obstacle into an asset, and to make a dream a reality. And that's what everybody does in life. We just do it differently at different times. The other question to really think about too is um, do you have, I do want to say that we are very, very short on time. I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for joining me on this very, very interesting interview. We really covered a lot. I hope that you, for one, enjoyed the interview on the podcast. And I
I
hope that
did.
this has given you food for thought. I hope, at very least, my hope is that this will help you to be a better gym teacher or a better teacher or even better, a better person. So if I can help you just by having this conversation, then it was a great episode. But of course, all I've done is asked a lot of silly questions. So, no pun intended, have to end it with this question with basically, Megan, if you can ask me only one question to really make me sweat, to really make me worth my salt as a podcaster, what do you really want to know about Aaron Richmond?
What is the meaning of life? No. uh, just what made you want to get into podcasting?
I felt that there was a gap between podcasts that were open to receiving opinions and guests, and there was other podcasts that were not open. And I want Aaron's opinion to be the most open podcast on iTunes, the podcast where people can come from all walks of life and to be able to really and to be able to really have an engaging conversation with me.
Mhm.
And I just love giving my opinion. And I love talking to people and teaching people. Like you, I love the act of teaching. It might not be physical education, but I still love the role that education can play in helping people in a really, really positive way.
Mhm.
Apart from clicking on the link in the description to see Megan's video, which is an excellent video. Um, if someone wants to get in touch with you personally, and I hope that people reach out to you because wow, you have a lot of knowledge and a great spirit about things. How would they reach out to you?
Um, mainly through like I know not many people might have a Facebook, but mainly through Facebook Messenger. That's the most direct way to contact me.
Okay, or of course they could also reply to your video and reach out to you on your channel, right?
Mhm. Or do
All
that,
right,
yes.
all right, all right, Megan Hale. Thanks so much.
Thank you.